etymon of the word itself. So I would like to read from a work by Michael Hoffman. And I'll read the exact color title. They were white and they were slaves. But what's important in this work is on page 6, he states this here. The height of academic and media fraud is revealed in the monopolistic trademark status the official controllers of education and mass communications have successfully established between the definition of the word slave and another connotative misapplied word, black. Mm-hmm. Now, let's just back up a bit. He said that the height of academic and media fraud is revealed. So basically what he's saying, in education and media, there's a fraud, and that fraud is the application of the word slave upon Asiatics. Mm-hmm. Okay? So this is what he's discussing. And he said that they have successfully established the definition of the word slave and have successfully applied it to Asiatics. So basically from that statement, he's basically saying that the academics have successfully applied the word slave to Asiatics, which means that we can safely infer from those statements that it never doesn't apply to Asiatics.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But because with the fraud that they created, they successfully had it stick to us.
Right.
Now, why would he? And let me continue. Let me continue. So, Michael Hoffman continues, and he says, "Yet the very word slave is derived from the word slave, or how they pronounce it, Slav. I don't change the pronunciation because that's sorcery. It's the same pronunciation. But he said it derives from Slav. And according to the Oxford English Dictionary, the word slave is another name for pale-skinned Europeans in Europe. Okay, and that is the compact edition of the Oxford English Dictionary, page 2,858. And Michael Hoffman continues, in other words, slave has always been a term for and a definition of a condition of pale-skinned people. Yet, we are told by the professors that it is not correct to refer to pale-skinned Europeans as slaves, but only as servants or captives or prisoners.
Or indentured servants. Yes.
Even though the very root of the word is derived from the historical fact of pale European slavery, unquote. Okay, so now we just uncovered that there's been this fraud that's been going on in academia. Why academia? Because remember, the pen is mightier than the sword. Mm-hmm. So when they reconstructed the histories, their condition as slaves, they threw it off themselves and put it on to us. But now we're going to get into as well, because we keep also assuming that the slave put us in this position. Whereas my contention that the slave could never, in history and even now, defeat a more Asiatic person. Impossible. So, which we will get into in our discussion here, how I will show that it's been Moors or other Asiatics to put other Asiatics in that condition. All right. So we just established that the title of the very movie itself is a misapplication of the word slave upon an Asiatic. Now let's get into some of the powerful statements that were made in the movie. Hold on one second. Princess?
Sure. And we're going to open up the lines, everyone, probably in the next 40 or 50 minutes. You could dial 858-357-8450, and that's option 1 if you have any questions or anything that you would like to add on to. I'm sorry, continue, Amani.
Okay, so let's get into some of the powerful statements from the movie. Mm-hmm. Now, just before I do that, I would like to state this here. From my observation and analysis upon movies, I think, based upon the evidence, and it is highly supported, and I will show how this movie supports the fact that sometimes these producers, directors, and writers who like to think upon themselves as great wizards and great magicians sometimes may just be tools used by our ancestors to communicate messages to us today. Mm-hmm. Okay? So a lot of these movies send out these messages to us that we have to decode, and they tell us a lot, and they can actually help us and clear up many unanswered questions as to who we are. And this movie does that. Princess, no, this is glue. Let's get into some of the powerful statements here made in this movie. Right. Now, so we have a scene where, in the beginning, the location, Saratoga, New York, in the year is 1841. And the main character name is Solomon Northrop. Okay? And so in the beginning of the movie, Solomon Northrop is approached by two gentlemen who is basically offering him an opportunity to make some finance using his talents, such as he was a violinist, musician, and so they had offered him that, he could basically tour with them, kind of like a circus tour, where they would perform, and he can make. They had offered him $1 a day plus $3 a performance, and so he agreed. And so then they said that you must accompany us down to Washington, D.C. So then the next scene shoots to Washington, D.C., and it's after they had worked and performed a week, and they're sitting there at the dinner table. And then one of the gentlemen states to Solomon, $43 all to you. And the other gentleman states to Solomon, it's been the most profitable week. And then he states to Solomon, your talents are undeniable. Okay, so now here we have these two gentlemen here being very grateful towards Solomon for his talents, and it was their most profitable week that they ever had. And based upon Solomon's talents, brought them finance. Now, as you know, they're laughing and they're drinking a lot of alcohol.
Right.
And then, Solomon passes out, and then he wakes up in chains. But now let's back up just a little bit. Right before when they arrive in Washington, D.C. So we have them walking in the streets, and what's kind of interesting is that Solomon's in full attire, and it's kind of I guess the higher society type individuals walking in the street, and based upon the colored history that we're taught, that we were quote unquote slaves and never in any position of freedom or authority or respect. So here's Solomon Winthrop in the movie walking down the street, and you would think, based upon what they told us in their school, in the schools we went to, in their institutions, that in 1841, an Asiatic walking down the street freely is not something normal, right?
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So you would expect that when they shot the scene there in Washington, D.C., and Northup's walking down the street there, that the other people, pale Europeans, would look in shock and would have, wait a second, what is he doing here?
Yeah, like how they do in,
didn't happen.
Right, yeah, like how they do in Alexandria, in Egypt, right to this day. Yes, I know what you're saying.
Right, but that didn't happen. He was, so no one looked at him strange or was shocked that he would be there walking, right?
Right.
So that's another powerful message.
Right.
Now, so he wakes up and he's in chains, and some other gentlemen come down, and he states to them, this is a mistake. You know, I'm free here. Hold on one second.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm back. Sorry about that. So he said, I'm free. And then the guy states, quote, resolve this. Produce your papers. And so he's in chains, so he's asked to resolve this issue and to produce his papers. But, of course, he didn't have his papers, and he's in chains. And then the guy states to Solomon, you're no free man, and you ain't from Saratoga. You're from Georgia. And then he continues, quote, you ain't a free man. You're nothing but a Georgia runaway. You're just a runaway nigger from Georgia, unquote. Now, that's very powerful. Why is that? Because here Solomon is being forced into a class, a different jurisdiction, where those people in that particular class are considered slaves. So, and this was the whole deal in that interchange. It was actually a contract interchange. So he was forcing Solomon to agree to those conditions, agree to that contract. It wasn't his natural condition because it's impossible because he's not a slave.
Right. Because
I read from Michael Hoffman in the Oxford Dictionary, slave is the very condition of pale-skinned Europeans. So you don't have to get a pale-skinned European to throw a contract to get them in that condition because that is their condition. So he continues. So he said, you're just a runaway nigger from Georgia. Solomon didn't agree to that contract. So then the guy decided he started beating Solomon. And while he's beating him, he's stating, you are a slave. You are a slave. And he's beating and beating and beating him. What is he trying to accomplish? He's trying to get consent to that particular contract from Solomon.
You know, Amani, on that scene right there, it really, when you read the book and then, like, look at the movie again, the vibrations of roots is going to come into play. The whole your name is Toby. And so it's like when I'm thinking about the time reference, it's almost as if like this whole story of Roots is really based on Solomon's story. But continue.
Okay. So he beats him. Then he asked Solomon, trying to get his consent again. He said, "Are you a slave?"
Right.
And Solomon says, "No." Then he started beating him again, beating him and beating him.
Mm-hmm.